Chisholm had always been the hope of his small neighborhood in Owerri. Everyone believed the boy was born for greatness. He studied late into the night, solving mathematics questions with excitement, and reading borrowed textbooks as if they were treasures. His teachers praised him, his classmates admired him, and even strangers said, "This boy will go far." But inside his own home, jealousy was growing quietly. After Chisholm's mother passed away, his father married Clara, a woman who smiled sweetly in public but carried a quiet bitterness toward anything that did not benefit her own son, Icum. She watched the way people praised Chisholm, how her husband looked proud of him, and how Icum struggled in school. Clara hid her envy behind forced hugs and fake concern, but her heart tightened every time Chisholm achieved something. When the scholarship letter arrived, an official envelope with Abuja stamps, Clara froze. She opened it secretly and saw the words that terrified her. "Congratulations, you have been awarded a full scholarship." Her hands shook, not from joy, but from fear. If Chisholm went to this university, he would rise higher than Icum ever could. People would compare them. Her own son would look small. Clara made a decision without blinking. She hid the letter inside a stack of old newspapers, deep in a box no one ever touched. Then she walked into the living room with a practiced sigh and looked at Chisholm with fake pity. "My dear," she said softly, "no school accepted you. Maybe you should forget this university dream and look for work. Life is not fair to everyone." The words hit Chisholm like a heavy stone. He had prayed, studied, hoped, yet the world seemed to keep shutting its doors. His father believed Clara without a second thought and scolded Chisholm for wasting time on books. Chisholm tried to smile, tried to act strong, but inside he felt something breaking. Every night he stared at the ceiling, wondering why his luck always turned dark at the moment he needed light the most. He didn't know a single hidden letter was standing between him and his destiny. The days that followed felt like slow punishment for Chisholm. Every morning he watched his classmates roll their suitcases onto buses heading to different universities. They waved excitedly, talking about new hostels, new teachers, new dreams. Chisholm stood by the dusty road, forcing a smile as he wished them luck, but the moment they turned away, his heart sank. He had worked harder than most of them, yet he was still stuck at home, sweeping the compound and running errands like someone who had never held a textbook in his life. His father grew harsher as the weeks passed. Clara fed him lies with a straight face, pretending to worry about Chisholm's future. "I told him to study harder," she would say softly. Maybe the schools didn't see anything special in him. And his father, blinded by trust, believed every word. He would point at Chisholm angrily and say, "You see your mates going to school. You think life is a joke? You didn't try hard enough." Each accusation stabbed deeper, not because of the words, but because it came from the man Chisholm loved. Chisholm tried to defend himself, but the more he spoke, the more it sounded like excuses. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like a door had been closed behind his back without him knowing. But he had no proof, no letter, nothing to show he had ever been accepted anywhere. The confusion turned into sadness, and the sadness slowly turned into a heavy silence. One night, after another round of scolding, Chisholm sat outside under the dim moonlight. The house no longer felt like home. Clara's cold eyes followed him everywhere. His father no longer looked at him with pride. Even Icum mocked him, calling him Mr. Failed Scholarship. Chisholm realized he was becoming a stranger in his own family. So he made the hardest decision of his life. He quietly folded his certificates, wrapped them in a nylon bag, and placed them inside his small backpack. Without telling anyone, he stepped out of the gate and walked into the darkness. No money, no plan, no support, just hope and pain pushing him forward. He didn't look back. He felt unwanted, unseen, but he refused to die in a place that no longer believed in him. Chisholm arrived in Abuja with the clothes on his body, a small backpack, and nothing else. The moment he stepped off the bus, the city swallowed him with its noise, its crowds, and its endless rush. He had no family there, no friend to call, and not even enough money for a proper meal. But he refused to turn back. He walked around the city until his legs ached, asking for work wherever he saw people lifting things or cleaning shops. Most people brushed him off, but one mechanic finally allowed him to clean tools and sweep the workshop in exchange for leftover food. At night, when the shop closed, Chisholm spread a thin piece of cardboard in a corner and slept beside cold metal parts and the smell of engine oil. Mosquitoes bit him, and rats ran across the floor, but he told himself, "This is temporary. I didn't come here to fail." Every morning he bathed with water from a broken tap behind the building, and went out to search for more jobs. He carried heavy loads in the market for small change, wiped tables in small eateries, and even helped push broken cars when people shouted for help. Nobody knew his story, nobody cared, but he kept moving. One afternoon, while resting under a tree, Chisholm noticed a roadside bookseller arranging old textbooks on a wooden table. His eyes lit up. He asked the seller if he could borrow books to read at night and return them in the morning. The man looked at him strangely but agreed, seeing something sincere in his eyes. From that night on, Chisholm read under the dim light of the mechanic's shop until sleep dragged his head down. He studied mathematics, physics, and even university past questions, reminding himself of the life he once dreamed about. Even though he was exhausted from work and hungry most days, the books kept his spirit alive. He whispered to himself while flipping through the pages, "If I can't enter through the gate, I'll build my own door." Each word strengthened him. He didn't know how or when things would change, but he believed something inside him was bigger than the hardship around him. He wasn't just surviving. He was preparing, quietly, for the moment the world would finally see him. Every night after work, Chisholm sat outside a small cafe that stayed open late, using the soft light spilling from its windows to read the borrowed textbooks. He kept his head down, his clothes dusty from the mechanic's shop, but his eyes moved across the pages with hunger. People passed him without noticing, but one man stopped. An elderly lecturer with gray hair and gentle eyes, Professor Maduka. For 3 nights, he watched Chisholm from inside the cafe. On the 4th night, curiosity made him step outside. He stood beside Chisholm and asked, "Young man, why are you reading university-level books at this hour?" Chisholm looked up, nervous, expecting trouble. But something about the professor's calm face made him open up. He explained how he had worked hard, how he believed he got accepted somewhere, but his stepmother claimed he failed. He told him about the nights in the mechanic's shop, the odd jobs, the hunger, and the fear of his dreams fading away. Maduka listened quietly, shocked by how much pain was hidden behind the boy's steady voice. When Chisholm finished, the professor asked him a few questions from the textbook he was holding. Chisholm answered every one flawlessly. Maduka's eyes widened. "You don't deserve to be out here," he said. "You deserve a desk, a lecture hall, and a future." He took Chisholm inside the cafe, bought him a meal, and asked for his certificates. When he saw the grades, he made up his mind instantly. "We will apply again," he said firmly. "And this time, nobody will hide your destiny." The next morning, Maduka took Chisholm to his office on campus. He helped him fill out new application forms, wrote him a strong recommendation letter, and paid all the fees himself. For the first time in months, Chisholm felt hope rising again. He spent the following weeks praying, checking email at the cafe, and working while waiting for a miracle. Then one evening, his phone buzzed. He opened the message slowly, afraid of disappointment, but his hands began shaking when he read it. He had been accepted, with a full scholarship. The same university he was once robbed of now welcomed him again. This time, no one could take it from him. Starting university felt like stepping into a new world for Chisholm. After everything he had suffered, he walked onto the campus with quiet gratitude and fierce determination. He refused to waste a single opportunity. From the first week, his lecturers noticed how quickly he understood lessons. While others struggled to follow equations or theories, Chisholm absorbed everything like water soaking into dry ground. But what impressed people most wasn't his intelligence. It was his humility. He never acted like he was better than anyone. He sat in front during lectures, took notes carefully, and always raised his hand to help clarify difficult topics for the class. Soon, word spread across the campus that there was a student who could explain the hardest subjects in the simplest way. Struggling students began coming to him after class, asking for help. Instead of turning them away, Chisholm created small study groups under a tree near the science block. He would sit with them for hours, breaking down formulas and theories until everyone understood. His patience made people admire him even more. Some students said, "Chisholm teaches better than some lecturers," and they meant it. He also volunteered at the university library, organizing books, helping with digital archives, and using the quiet space to work on his own ideas. He started solving complex academic problems that even final-year students found challenging. Professors began recognizing his name, calling him to assist with difficult research tasks. They sent him papers to review, asked him to join projects, and recommended him for academic seminars. By his third year, Chisholm had developed a reputation far beyond the campus. His research paper on educational innovation attracted attention from other universities, and within months he was invited to present his work at conferences. People were stunned that such brilliance came from a young man who once slept in a mechanic shop. When graduation day arrived, Chisholm didn't just pass. He graduated at the top of his entire department. His name was announced with loud applause, and his father back home saw his picture trending online without knowing the full story yet. International institutions began sending him emails filled with opportunities. Chisholm had become more than a student. He had become proof that destiny can rise even from the darkest places. Chisholm's life took another unexpected turn when he received an email that made him freeze in the hallway. A top university abroad, one he had only dreamed about, offered him a full fellowship to continue his studies. The message said they had been following his research and wanted him on their team. He read it over and over, hardly believing it was his name printed there. Professor Maduka hugged him proudly, saying, "The world is finally opening its doors to you." Arriving in the UK felt like stepping into a story he once thought belonged only to other people. Everything was new: the cold weather, the huge libraries, the advanced labs. But instead of feeling intimidated, Chisholm threw himself into his work. He spent long nights in the research center studying, experimenting, and writing. His supervisors were shocked by how quickly he mastered complex theories. They said he had the mind of someone twice his age. Within a short time, Chisholm's research caught the attention of educational experts. He focused on ways to make learning accessible for children from poor backgrounds, inspired by his own struggles in Nigeria. His ideas were fresh, practical, and powerful. Soon he published his first major paper, and it spread quickly across academic platforms. Invitations started pouring in, from conferences, universities, and global panels. People wanted to hear the young African researcher who spoke with passion and clarity. He continued pushing himself, completing his PhD with record-breaking achievements. His thesis won awards for innovation, and he received recognition from international education bodies. At one event, an old professor whispered, "This boy is going to change the world." Chisholm stood on stages he once admired from afar, sharing his journey, reminding people that greatness doesn't depend on where you start but on how hard you fight to rise. His name began appearing in journals, podcasts, and global discussions. He became a symbol of possibility, a boy who was once denied a scholarship now shaping the future of education worldwide. Reporters wrote headlines like "From Mechanic Shop to Global Scholar" and "The Nigerian Mind Inspiring the World." And while he appreciated the attention, he stayed humble, remembering the nights he studied under dim lights, hungry but hopeful. His success wasn't just personal. It became a beacon of resilience and self-belief for thousands who followed his story. Years later, after Chisholm had built a name that echoed across continents, an official email arrived from the university in Abuja, the same institution he once entered as a struggling boy with borrowed textbooks. They invited him to return and lead a new educational innovation project that aimed to transform learning nationwide. The message praised his achievements abroad and said Nigeria needed minds like his. Chisholm felt a warmth in his chest. He had left the country as an unknown student, but he was returning as someone the world now recognized. He packed his bags with a calm pride, not for revenge or show-off, but for gratitude. When he landed in Abuja, he expected a quiet welcome, maybe one staff member waiting for him. Instead, he found a small crowd holding banners with his name. Journalists were there, lecturers were there, and even students who had read his work online gathered excitedly. They clapped when he stepped out of the terminal, and for a moment he didn't know how to react. He wasn't used to attention, but the respect felt genuine, earned, and long overdue. At the university gate, security officers saluted him, opening the entrance without asking a single question. This was the same gate he once dreamed of entering as a poor boy in Abuja. Now it opened for him fully, without hesitation. As he walked through the campus, people stopped to greet him. Some whispered, "That's Dr. Chisholm." while others pointed eagerly like they were seeing a legend. Inside the faculty building, his former lecturers waited, smiling proudly. These were the people who once guided him through his toughest academic years. Professor Maduka stood in front, his eyes full of joy. He shook Chisholm's hand firmly, saying, "Nigeria has been waiting for you." Chisholm felt his throat tighten slightly. Hearing those words from the man who once found him reading under a cafe light meant everything. What Chisholm didn't know was that the project invitation was only the beginning. Behind closed doors, the university board had been discussing something much bigger. They saw him not just as a scholar, but as someone capable of leading the entire institution into a new era. While he walked around campus greeting students, smiling humbly, he had no idea that his life was about to shift again. This time on a level even he never imagined. The university organized a grand ceremony to unveil the new leader of their biggest academic project. Everyone assumed the event was just a formal introduction. But the hall was filled with unusual excitement. Important guests arrived in black cars, government officials took their seats, and top professors whispered among themselves. Chisholm sat quietly in the front row, unaware of the storm about to unfold. He thought he was simply there to present his ideas. He had no clue that every spotlight in the hall was secretly pointed at him. When the ceremony began, the Vice-Chancellor stepped onto the stage with a serious expression. The lights dimmed, the screens lit up, and the murmurs died down. Instead of talking about the project, the Vice-Chancellor started speaking about a man who rose from hardship, a mind that had made Nigeria proud, a young scholar who turned struggle into global recognition. Chisholm listened, impressed, thinking they were honoring some renowned professor. But then his name appeared on the giant screen behind the stage, Dr. Chisholm Okereke. People gasped. Chisholm's heart skipped, confused. The Vice-Chancellor lifted the microphone and announced clearly, "Ladies and gentlemen, the board has unanimously chosen Dr. Chisholm Okereke as the new Chancellor of this institution." For a moment, the hall went silent. Then it exploded with applause so loud it shook the walls. People stood up, clapping, cheering, some shouting his name. Cameras flashed as Chisholm's face filled every screen, showing a man who had survived betrayal, conquered the world, and now returned stronger than ever. He blinked, stunned, feeling tears threaten to fall but controlling them with a slow, humble smile. Social media caught fire instantly. Clips of the announcement spread across platforms. Hashtags like #FromRejected to Chancellor, #Chisholm the Legend, and #ProudlyNigerian trended within minutes. Students rushed outside to record reaction videos, shouting, "This is the same Chisholm that used to tutor everyone. He deserves it." Even people who didn't know him personally felt inspired. Messages poured in from across Africa. He slept in a mechanic shop and now leads a whole university. This is the definition of destiny. Chisholm walked onto the stage slowly, still processing the moment. The lights warmed his face, the applause followed him like a wave, and for the first time, he truly understood how far he had come. Back in the village, people gathered around the small televisions in shops and living rooms as the news replayed the moment Chisholm was announced as the new Chancellor. His face filled the screen, confident, respected, celebrated across the nation. When Clara saw it, she froze. The remote slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Her legs weakened, and she had to hold on to the wall to keep from falling. She stared at the TV in disbelief, as if her eyes were lying to her. The same boy she once told to forget university was now standing on a stage with leaders applauding him. She felt her heart drop to her stomach. Ikem walked into the room, saw the screen, and his expression darkened. He had been jobless for months, spending his days complaining and blaming everyone but himself. Seeing Chisholm, whom he used to mock, now being praised nationwide filled him with a mix of shock and shame. Their neighbors began whispering, some shaking their heads at Clara, others saying loudly, "Look at how destiny works. You can't stop a star from shining." Chisholm's father entered the room next, confused by the noise. When he saw his son's face on the screen, wearing a chancellor's sash, he dropped into a chair, overwhelmed. The reporters spoke about Chisholm's early struggles, hinting at betrayal, hardship, and a scholarship that never reached him. The words hit the father like sharp stones. Slowly he turned to Clara. "Is there something you need to tell me?" he asked, his voice low but shaking. Clara's lips trembled. The truth she had buried for years rose to the surface, and she couldn't hide anymore. Tears streamed down her face as she sank to the floor. She confessed everything: the letter she hid, the lies she told, the way she tried to stop Chisholm's future because of jealousy. The house fell silent as the weight of her actions settled over them. For the first time, Chisholm's father understood the pain his son had carried. Guilt washed over him. He wished he could turn back time and protect the boy he failed to believe in. The whole family felt the sting of regret, deep, heavy, and deserved. Clara cried uncontrollably, knowing she had tried to destroy a child who was now celebrated by the entire nation. When Chisholm finally returned to his village, the ground shook with celebration. A long convoy of black cars rolled in slowly, and people rushed out of their houses, cheering his name like he was a national hero returning from battle. Children waved small flags, elders clapped proudly, and neighbors who once ignored him now pushed forward just to touch his hand. Drummers formed a line on the dusty road, beating rhythms of victory. Chisholm stepped out of the car with calm grace, dressed simply but carrying an aura that made everyone fall silent in admiration. His father pushed through the crowd, eyes red with regret and relief. He stopped in front of his son, trembling. For a moment, Chisholm said nothing. Then he pulled his father into a gentle hug. It was forgiveness without words, soft, honest, and healing. His father cried openly, holding him like he feared he might disappear again. The villagers watched the moment with emotion, understanding how deep their bond had once been and how much pain had passed between them. Clara stood behind the crowd, unable to step forward. Her hands shook as she tried to wipe her tears. She had aged quickly, guilt carving lines into her face. When their eyes finally met, she froze. Chisholm didn't shout, didn't insult her, didn't ask why she did what she did. He simply looked at her, one long, cold, quiet stare that carried every unanswered question, every silent wound, every moment she tried to break him. Clara covered her face and sobbed, knowing forgiveness from him would never come as easily as it came for his father. Later that week, Chisholm returned to the university gate, the same place he once passed as a struggling boy searching for light. Cameras captured him standing tall, the sun setting behind him like a crown. He touched the gate gently and spoke with a calm, steady voice. "They hid my letter, but they couldn't hide my destiny." His words spread across the internet instantly, quoted everywhere from news pages to classroom walls. Before walking inside, he added one final truth, the one that defined his entire journey. "Betrayal buried me, but purpose made me grow." And with that, he stepped forward, leaving behind the pain but carrying the legacy of a boy who refused to break.